The craziest championship in Formula One history. Which one do you think it was? The answer, of course, is subjective. But if there is one world championship that has definitely marked the history of Formula One, it's definitely the 1997 Formula One World Championship. And that also was probably the season where Michael Schumacher made his biggest mistake ever. And you wanna know why that championship was probably the craziest in Formula One history? Well, you are about to find it out. Let's get started. 17 race weekends in which 12 teams are ready to fight. Yeah, and I say 12 because that year 2 new teams entered the scene. The Stewart Grand Prix, founded by Jackie Stewart and his son Paul, based in Milton Keynes. But wait, Milton Keynes? Is it the same headquarters at Red Bull? Exactly, and that's no coincidence. Because in fact, that was Red Bull's firstborn. Because that team became Jaguar Racing in 2000, and then in 2005 it became the Red Bull Racing team that nowadays we all know. On the other side, the other team was Lola, which was due to debut in 1998, but MasterCard, the main sponsor, put pressure on the team and they entered Formula One 1 year earlier. That was a really bad idea. By the way, the fact that this championship was going to be a spectacular year was immediately clear from the presentation of the cars. Because on February 13 at the Alexandra Palace in London, the McLaren MP412 was presented with an incredible show. Just to make you understand, on the stage, at the presentation of the car, on the stage there was Jamiroquai and the Spice Girls, perhaps the most famous band in those years, in a blaze of music that highlighted the McLaren Silver Arrows cars. But by the way, because we're talking about Red Bull and Spice Girls, do you know that Red Bull's team principal Christian Horner's wife is Gary Halliwell, one of the Spice Girls? Yes, exactly that beautiful redheaded woman you see in Drive to Survive. We live in a small world, don't we? We truly live in a small world. Back to us, do you remember the Lola Racing we mentioned earlier? Well, we can say that their racing season was a bit difficult. Or maybe I should say that there was no racing season at all. Because that car was so badly made and was so slow that in the qualifying of the first race, it was 11.7 seconds slower than the pole position. It was probably slower than a Formula 2 car, way below 107% of the best lap time. And so it was excluded from the opening race. But there's more. Considering the bad result, MasterCard decided to retire from the sponsorship. And so the racing team ended the Formula One season after just one race. And it's only the first race, guys. So the championship just began in Australia. David Coulthard on McLaren wins ahead of Michael Schumacher on Ferrari, with Jacques Villeneuve who withdrew in the first lap of the race after a contact with Eddie Irvine, Schumacher's teammate. And since you like fun facts, do you know that 2 years ago Jacques Villeneuve was racing in the Euro Naska, the same championship that I did for the last 2 years, and he was racing in the same car driven by Vladimir Stewart, one of my biggest opponents. Guys, this world is so small. I can't stop saying that this is a small world. Anyway, back to 1997. Already from the pre-season test, it was clear that the Williams with Villeneuve was the car to beat. The Williams? The one that Latifi and Sargent used to throw in the wall? Well, for older people watching this video, it's no news. But for younger people who didn't live those years, and who don't know much about Formula One history, well, Williams has been one of the fastest Formula One teams for years. Founded in 1977, it has won 7 Drivers' World Championships and 9 Constructor World Championships. I made a video on this channel, you can check it out, where I explain why and how Williams went from the fastest to the slowest car on the grid. Check it out after the video. And even back in 1987, they were super fast. In fact, in the following race in Brazil, Jacques Villeneuve won, while the Ferraris at the beginning of the season were struggling a lot, with Eddie Irvine lapped even twice. Difficulties that continued even in the third race, with Michael Schumacher's withdrawal, and another win for Villeneuve, who was starting to gain more advantage in the standings. At this point, it's already clear who will win the Formula 1 World Championship. Williams with Jacques Villeneuve. They were just too fast. But at the beginning of the video, I told you that this was the craziest World Championship ever, right? So, from the San Marino Grand Prix in Imola, things started to change. With Villeneuve withdrawing after dominating the race, and Schumacher arriving seconds and starting to regain points. In Monaco then, the rain betrayed the Williams, who chose the dry tires over the wet, and then ended up on the wall, while Michael Schumacher dominated the race and then took the lead of the standings. In the following races, Williams and Ferrari kept battling, and at that point it became clear that the championship had to be decided between Jacques Villeneuve on the Williams and Michael Schumacher on Ferrari. The battle goes on and on with alternating performances. In some races Schumacher wins, in some others Villeneuve wins. Disasters happen in some of them, like at Nürburgring where Ralf Schumacher triggers an incident that crashes Michael Schumacher and lets Villeneuve win, until the 16th and penultimate race of the season in Japan. Villeneuve is leading the standings and could win the championship with one race in advance. However, during free practice, he overtakes one car under the yellow flags. And after that, you may say, okay, he got a reprimand, a fine. Yes, but since he's done it before, he got a much bigger penalty. Tailoring race, but then after the race, he got disqualified. Can you imagine that? Unbelievable for nowadays Formula 1. That was a super hard blow with Michael Schumacher back in the lead of the standings for just 1 point. And so we get to Jerez de la Frontera, the last race. A hot climate in which the tension corrodes in the paddock for a season finale that will make the history of Formula 1. In fact, already on Saturday, something magical happens. And the more I think about it, the more I get chills, because that's something that probably will never repeat ever again in Formula 1 history. Listen to this. The engines start up. The sound of the V10's engines ignites the crowd that is ready to enjoy the show. And God, listen to that sound. Why can't they bring back those engines? Why? However, back to us. Qualifying session. Villeneuve's lap starts. The Williams seems to fly. The setup is perfect and it stops the clock at 1:21.072. Schumacher's lap also starts. Ferrari this time has put a formidable car on track, and he's ahead by 0.3 of seconds compared to the last sector. But at the last corner he got understeer. He fights and crosses the finish line with 1:21.072. The exact same lap time as Jacques Villeneuve. Can you imagine that? The two contenders setting the same lap time in qualifying. But Michael Schumacher classified seconds because he did that lap after the other. And if you think it's over, it's not. Because at that point, Heinz-Harald Frentzen on the other Williams sets a 1:21.072. 3 drivers with the same lap time. It never happened in Formula 1 history, and I can't believe that it will happen again in the future. That's something so crazy that many people in the following years speculated that there was a problem with the transponder and those lap times were not real. But you know what? We'll never know the truth. But if we also consider that the driver in P4 finished just 56 thousandths of a second behind them, that was probably the closest first 2 rows in Formula 1 history. So it's time. Sunday, the race starts with Michael Schumacher, who has different eyes than usual. He is in his focus bubble. He knows that he will have his chances and he doesn't want to waste them. In fact, already in turn 1, he takes the lead, taking advantage of the bad traction of Villeneuve at the start. The red is firmly at the lead even after the pit stops, although the Canadian driver is a fury and continues to eat tenths of a second on the Ferrari. With 22 laps to go, the Williams is really close to the Ferrari. Villeneuve tries the attack in the dry sack corner, but Schumacher closes the line and hits Jacques Villeneuve's car. one of the most iconic incidents in Formula One history, and Michael Schumacher is out. Schumacher in the gravel with a broken suspension, while Jacques Villeneuve, albeit with some damage, continues the race, crosses the line and takes the world title by finishing the race in P3. Jacques Villeneuve is a Formula One world champion. Today he won his first and only world title, and the last one in Williams history. But this is just the beginning, because the hours after the race are really heated. The British teams accuse Ferrari of having used the lap drivers of the customer teams to slow down Villeneuve. Journalists from all over the world attack Michael Schumacher. Michael is unsportsmanlike. Michael does not know how to lose. Michael is an unfair driver. After having succeeded 3 years before, this time too he tried to succeed by clashing with his opponent. In Italy, many people wonder if Michael Schumacher is really the right man to bring the title back to Maranello. 2 weeks later, for that incident, the FIA disqualified Michael Schumacher from the whole 1997 season. Just for one incident, disqualified from the season. Can you imagine that? The whole world is wondering what's going on through the head of that 2 times world champion. How? Why did he do such a maneuver? There were also some people who, after many years, claimed that the German's Ferrari was destined to retire due to a technical problem, and they also state that they knew it. However, those were the most difficult months of Michael Schumacher at Ferrari. It will take 2 years more for redemption, which will come in 2000. But that's another story that maybe I will tell you in another video. But after all these crazy things, the 1997 season did not end there. Because at the end of the championship, for all the statistics fans, there was also a crazy surprise. And this is perhaps even crazier than the same lap time in qualifying for 3 cars. Listen to this. The 2 titles pretenders, named Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve, never shared the podium throughout the whole season. What? You mean the 2 title contenders, which were almost tied in the last race, never went on the podium together in 17 races of the season? How is that possible? Well, in 1997 things were much different than nowadays races. Withdrawing due to reliability or mechanical problems of the cars was much frequent than nowadays. Withdrawals out of 17 races per driver. For example, Jacques Villeneuve withdrew 6 times, but still won the title. Rubens Barrichello retired 14 times out of 17 races that season, mostly because of technical problems. And however scored 1 point in the 3 races that he finished. The crazy Formula One of the 90s. Anyway, leaving these little stats aside, the 2 title contenders never stepped on the same podium that season. How? Simply crazy races, more than 2 competitive cars, and therefore more teams capable of winning races. Something a bit like nowadays MotoGP, right? The 1997 Formula One World Championship was capable of providing stories, anecdotes, and events that will remain forever etched in motorsports history. That's because perhaps the 1997 season was the craziest Formula One championship of all times. And what do you think about it? What was the craziest Formula One season ever for you? Let me know what you think in the comments below.